Firstly, I'd just like to do a quick welcome to country. So I'd like to acknowledge I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I want to welcome all of you today. So thanks for making the time. It shouldn't take an hour unless you've got lots of questions, in which case we'll fill the whole hour up. Our presentation won't take a long time. I am Mark Daniels. I'm from Whitebox Enterprises. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here, and I'm also Director of Whitebox Finance, and that's who's bringing the Social Enterprise Loan Fund together at the moment. I've got two colleagues in the room. One is Wendy, and Wendy's in our comms team. She's pulling all of this together, and she's pulled our beautiful website together. So thanks, Wendy, for all your work on that. And the other is Myrna, and Myrna is the General Manager of the Social Enterprise Loan Fund, and she's going to be presenting with me as part of this. What else do I want to say? Well, I guess I just wanted to start by saying this has been a bit of an odyssey for Whitebox over the last 5 years. These things don't come together easily. And 2 years ago, we started to raise capital for this, seeking $5 million, and it's taken us the whole of 2 years to get to this point. So these things don't happen easily. I'm going to share my screen, and then we're going to start the presentation. So just bear with me and I'll share. We all good? Yes, thumbs up. It's sharing. Beautiful. So, firstly, I guess this is the agenda for today. It's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to walk you through who we are, what the self is, what the preconditions for getting a loan from the self are, how it works, and how to apply. Yeah, we're going to give you a fairly good introduction. A lot of this is on the website. I'm going to stick to script on this, and then we'll take lots of questions from you if you've got any at the end. So firstly, if you don't know Whitebox, it's worth just a brief description of who Whitebox is. We are an organisation that was set up to mainstream jobs-focused social enterprises in Australia. So we do that in 3 different ways. So we've got 3 key priorities as an organisation. The first is to build large-scale jobs-focused social enterprises from the ground up. So we have built Australian Spatial Analytics. I'm not going to go into any detail on any of these. Beacon Laundry in Adelaide, which is a partnership with Bedford Industries, and Civic, which is it's a civil works social enterprise. And we've tried others, and some of them haven't worked as well. The second thing we do is we strengthen existing jobs-focused social enterprises to scale and grow. And most of that work is actually, we're still doing some of that work. We've bought properties to accommodate social enterprises. So we've got 3 properties in Melbourne and New South Wales where social enterprises are housed. Pardon me. We've had an advisory service, and we're starting to ramp that up again. We have a financial wellbeing program where any jobs-focused social enterprise can access our financial wellbeing program, and we'll deliver it to you. And we're doing something this year called the Social Enterprise Jobs Summit, which is going to be run in Melbourne on the 11th and 12th of June. And the last pillar for us is innovate. And innovate is really leading systems change initiatives to accelerate the growth of social enterprises. So we've been running a payment by outcomes trial with the Department of Social Services and 17 social enterprises over the last 2.5 years. Still got another year to run, but it's an innovative way of social enterprises getting paid for employment outcomes. We are running a new program called Evolve, and Evolve is working with 3 disability enterprises to take them to a point of best practice over a 2-year period of intensive support and capital. And we also have the Social Enterprise Loan Fund. That's another innovation pillar for us. And I guess the innovation in itself is that we are trying to create something that's not yet in the market that could create significant systems change if we can prove the value of this initiative. So we did a lot of work trying to understand whether, whether what we thought was needed was actually needed. And we talked to social enterprises and we looked at research. And when we talked to social enterprises, looked at international research, we were hearing from people that there was a need to get a product in the market where people could borrow and that they could get the money they needed quickly. And we also discovered that a whole lot of social enterprises have got the capacity to repay loans. And quite often, I guess there's been an assumption that they don't. International default rates for social enterprises are extremely low, like sub 10%, generally speaking. So high likelihood of repayment. What we also heard was that access to finance is a barrier for growth to social enterprises. No shock there. If you can't access capital when you need it, you can't grow. That no one really had, some social enterprises can access mainstream capital, most can't, because they don't have the balance sheet or they don't have the profitability that a mainstream finance lender would require. And what we found was that most of these organisations were grant dependent. And the problem with grant dependency, I mean, we all love free money. There's no doubt about that. Although it's rarely free, there's always strings attached, and we sort of understand that as well. We thought that this was really stifling the sector because a grant is a competition at the end of the day. So you either win the grant or you don't win the grant. It doesn't matter how good your application is. Someone else is determining whether you're grant ready, whether you should win the grant. And, there's often one winner or two winners, and maybe there's 50 applicants. And what we really sort of are trying to do here is say, well, if you're an investable social enterprise and you deliver social impact, we have a loan product that you can access at any time, whenever you need it, provided you meet our due diligence requirements. So we really wanted to find new sources of capital that just weren't grants that could help the sector to grow. And really interestingly, we've had a really healthy pipeline of interest from social enterprises. So there are probably 4 or 5 that we're looking at the moment in terms of due diligence. This is just a bit about White Box Finance. So I said before that, I talked about White Box and what White Box does. White Box Finance was actually established as it's a separate entity. In fact, in White Box Group, there's about 9 different companies, just to give people a sense. Every social enterprise is its own entity, and a whole range of other things are entities as well. And this is an entity in its own right. It's got its own board, and it makes its own decisions at the end of the day. It's been operating since 2020. It's done about 4 direct loans to social enterprises in that time. It's also bought 3 properties or assisted in the capital raises for the 3 properties that we purchased, and it's assisted with other capital raises in White Box. So we've raised about $50 to $55 million in the last 5 years, and White Box Finance has been an integral part of that capital raise. We've got a picture of all the people involved there. It's just to give you a sense, I guess, of the calibre of people that are involved in the decision-making in the organisation. So I've already mentioned Myrna. Myrna's been a fund manager with 20 years experience. She's the only staff member on this chart. So she's employed by White Box Finance, but we have another analyst as well, Matthew. The other 5 of us, 4 of us are board members, and the 5 of us are the investment committee members. And so you can see I've got a social enterprise background. I've been in the sector for 25 years. Josh has, worked for Goldman Sachs and everyone else, and he's got an impact investment background. He's been doing a lot of impact investment in the last 5 to 10 years. Matt Cameron is the risk management expert. He's the general manager of investment risk at Hester. Lauren is a director of sustainability team. She used to work in SVA's finance team, so she understands impact investment really well. We've got Craig Parker. So Craig's the only person of the 5 of us who's not on the board. He's on the IC though, the investment committee, and I'll explain that in a tick. And Craig's role is Craig's background is pure banking. He was a very senior executive in Westpac and his career, he's retired now, but he had a 40-year banking career. So it's quite a mix of skills, and that's the intention. So we all understand social enterprise, some of us more than others. We all understand finance, some of us a lot, an enormous amount, and some of them, like me, less. So the other, I've referred to the investment committee. So just so people understand, every proposal that comes to us that we do due diligence on and want to make a loan to, will go to our investment committee for approval. That's just part of the process. Last point on this slide is that the whole, that Rawlings Bolton is our external fund administrator, which means, they're a very tried and tested fund administrator. So they work with us to distribute the money back to our investors and collect some of the money too, I think, from the people we loan to. So what is the SELF? Okay, so it's a $4.2 million loan fund to support employment pathways. And just to be clear, we want it to be a $5 million fund, and we're relatively confident we'll get to $5 million, which was our original target for this. We are deploying the majority of capital in the next 3 years. So I just want to be really clear. We may not be around for a long time. And I'll explain, that once the capital's out, we can't recycle the capital. So it'll come back in and then go back to our investors. So in the next 3 years, we want to make most, if not all, of our loans, and then the money will come back in over the next 6 to 7 years from that time. And what we really are doing here is it's almost a, I guess it's a pilot project to prove a concept. So we're intending to do an evaluation in 28, 29, which will show, hopefully, that this has been a really good investment by their various investors. They've got a really good social return as well as a financial return. And that hopefully we'll be able to do another fund on the back of that evaluation, and we'll be able to continue to provide capital on an ongoing basis, setting up funds on an ongoing basis as well. So that's just to give you a picture of our big picture. So there are some fairly big supporters behind this. We've got the Westpac Foundation, the Macquarie Group Foundation, the Australian Government, the Victorian Government, the English Family Foundation, and the Shirley Norman Foundation. We are really appreciative of the money that they've put into this. They're getting a return, but they're getting a below market return, so that we can get the money to you at affordable rates. So they've been real leaders in the sector. Okay, in terms of the SELF, this is what we're looking at: $100,000 to $500,000 loans. The interest rates start as low as 6.5%, and they could go down to 6%. So what we're doing is we're giving a reward. So at the start of the loan, you'll set an impact target, i.e. we'll create 10 jobs over the life of this, or whatever it is that we both agree to, that is the impact target. And if you meet that impact target by year 4, you get a 6% rate rather than 6.5% rate, and we correct it so that over the life of the loan, it's a 6% rate that you're paying rather than 6.5%. That is where we expect most of our loans to go to, just to be really clear. We do have higher rates, and those rates are focused on jobs-focused social enterprises that have problems getting any capital but have a significant capacity to repay. Okay, so and I'm not going to go into the nuance of that, but it's at those for whom the ability to repay is quite easy. They're just having problems getting a loan at the end of the day, right? And they can afford a 9.5% rate. It could go down to 9%. It's the same. It's got impact targets. Our loan terms are up to 7 years. Which is longer. Most loans are 3 years, just so people understand. There is some flexibility in the loan, and there is security is not required, but is preferred. So if we can secure it against an asset, a loan, that would be our preferred. If we can't, we understand that too, and we'll look at other options around security, or potentially no security if there was no option around that. I'm going to stop here. So I've given you a description of who we are and what the SELF is. I'm going to throw to Myrna, and Myrna's going to walk you through some more information on the SELF.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? I'm off mute. Yeah, so I am the general manager of the Self, and that means that if you apply for a loan, I'm the person you deal with. I will be the person who will review your expression of interest. You'll have a meeting with me, and is on the investment committee, as he said. So he's one of five people then who will have to approve that loan. So he's really important in the process, but I'll probably be more hands-on with the social enterprises. My background is chartered accountancy, and I'm also a chartered financial analyst. I worked in the private sector until about 2 years ago and started with White Box Enterprises. So I'm still learning about social enterprise. As Mark said, there's plenty of people on the team who've got a wealth of experience, especially Mark, who I call the grandfather of social enterprise, but which he hates. But we look, I feel we've got a really good team to help you through the process. So I'm just going to ask Mark, can you get us onto the next slide so I can explain um,
You want
what
eligibility or how to apply?
yeah, this is a slide, sorry. Yeah. So then the question is who's eligible? So we have a mandate, right? So an investment policy that has strict criteria that you need to satisfy to be eligible for a loan. And if we breach that, then we're answerable to our investors. So as Mark explained, people have provided us money and then we're on lending it. And what we've said to our investors is that the following will be adhered to. And we'll only lend to people or to social enterprises that are not for profits and that are DGR registered or have DGR status, have been operating as a social enterprise for at least 2 years and generate over 50% of their income from trade. There's a little bit of interpretation around that. So I suppose if more than 50% of your income comes from philanthropy and grant, but some of it's targeted especially is to fund, or sorry, is to avail of your services or a product that you produce, then you could qualify. So just don't rule yourself out based on that. You must create jobs for people facing complex barriers to employment or in some ways support employment pathways. And the really good thing about this is we all know it's really hard to measure or quantify social impact. And the really nice thing about working in employment pathways is it's much easier to quantify. And as part of our reporting to our investors and to the greater community, we'll be able to say how many jobs we have helped in some way create or employment pathways. The impact has to be in Australia. So you couldn't be a social enterprise here and doing all your work in Cambodia or somewhere. Your commercial turnover needs to be at least 50 grand in the last financial year. Now, that doesn't sound like not a lot, but in those circumstances, if your social enterprise that only has had 50% of revenue, or sorry, 50K of revenue last year, then we would like to see your forecast that shows, that you are going to make a reasonable amount of money over the next couple of years in order to be able to repay us the loan. You need to pay full award wages, and we will check that against award wages benchmarks. And then you need to demonstrate through due diligence that your social enterprise has the capacity to repay the loan. And that's kind of a no-brainer. What you will hear constantly, and for those of you that don't understand or not familiar with the term due diligence, it means we would just be kicking the tires of your business. So, we will look at your past financials, your forecast, the variables, the assumptions in that forecast, who the members of your organization are, have you been compliant with AC&C regulations, just in general, everything about your business. And we would hope that you'd be really transparent. Just in my experience, it really facilitates a fast process, which everyone wants. If you are totally upfront from the start, warts and all, because there will be things that, will look not so credit positive, so may detract from your attractiveness to a lender. But if we're very patient and we know the types of businesses we're dealing with. And so if we know right from the outset what your issues are, then it'll be much easier for us to address them and work out a way to work around that and get the capital to you. So would you mind sharing the next slide, please, Mark? Thanks. So then how do you apply for a loan? So if you go to our website, we have an expression of interest button in red. It's hard to miss. You will be asked to fill out a questionnaire with lots of questions. The more detail, the better, but whatever you can manage. I will then the program we use is called Process Street, and that questionnaire sends me an email with the summary of your questions. I'll go in and look at it. It'll be generally obvious whether you're eligible or not, but in some cases where there's any gray areas, I might ask to have a call with you anyway, just to go through and make sure that you didn't meet the criteria. But if you did meet the criteria, then I will reach out to you and ask you to organize a meeting, and we'll chat for half an hour. And in that meeting, we'll talk more generally about you, the business, your team, stuff that hasn't been covered in the questionnaire, and your needs, and and your timeline, more importantly. And then you'll be invited from that, if we decide to proceed, to kick off this due diligence process. So in that, part of that process is us asking for a suite of documents. So that'll be, as I mentioned earlier, your financial statements, your forecast, and other legal documents, your constitution, whatever, all those things. And then we will arrange a number of meetings with you. One of them will be an on-site meeting where we will come out and meet you and the team in person and see your building and hopefully meet some of your customers or whatever. And then then I will prepare a paper that gets presented to our IC. So that was the number of people you saw on that previous page. And then they will decide whether they feel this is an appropriate loan for the self. And if they say it is, generally they will have some preconditions, or you maybe discuss the terms that we've decided upon. And then we'll come back and say to you, or I will come back and say, right, guys, you've been successful. We're going to give you a loan for 300,000. These are the terms, and then you'll agree to them, and then we do the legals. So the legal agreement, the legal process should be quite straightforward, because we've created kind of a run-of-the-mill document, a very standard yellow label type loan agreement. What makes it a bit lengthier is if there's security. We do request a GSA where there is no security. And that can be pretty standard as well, but it just takes a little bit longer. And then hopefully we get to distribute the loan funds once those legal agreements are executed. You get the money, and then going forward, we ask for ongoing impact and financial reporting. And I can't underestimate how important that part of it is, because we want to be able to assist you. We have a team of, and don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean you get ongoing consultancy, but it means that, if we have a good working relationship, if anything arises, we have a whole team of people in White Box Enterprises that might be able to provide assistance in various areas, whether that's wraparound services or budgeting, or trying to access, even new markets. So, yeah, I think I've probably spoken enough. So if anyone has a question, please either put them in. Oh, there's a few questions already there in the
chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me go to the chat. Okay.
Yeah, that's the application process from JB Jorkston. It's going to be, I would hope, 3 months maximum. But it always often depends on how ready the social enterprise is. And if you've everything ready, and we can just waltz in and you make yourself very available, the probability is it could be quicker than that. But I would still say 6 weeks would be the absolute quickest we could do it. But it all depends on, we have to get the investment committee together. After the first couple of loans, it will get quicker and quicker, because we're a new committee and we'll begin to understand how everyone wants things presented. But yeah, I would say between 6 weeks and 3 months.
Thanks. From there now. So Scott's question is there a minimum loan ratio, e.g. 50% of a project? Can the loan be part of a suite of funding towards a project, i.e. loan, grant, own funds?
Yeah, look, we're open to lots of different structures. If you are doing a syndicated loan, then I think it's important to let us know and the other party know at the start that that's happening. And that's for everyone's benefit. I think that might even, it means we can share part of the DD, or we can set up a data room that we can all access. Grant funding, fantastic. If you can access that, that's great. It's good for us to have an idea of how much grant funding you've pitched for, or how much you think you're going to get, because we'll be working towards a loan uses, sources and uses as part of our review. So if you tell us you need 500,000 and we're determining how much interest, and we're looking at your cash flow forecast and trying to establish your capacity to pay the interest and repayments on that. It'll change slightly if then you go, actually, we only need 100,000 because we've got 400,000 from this grant. So just keep that in mind. Transparency is great. And remember that we are totally, we totally appreciate this is all commercial in confidence, and we will not share anything. So yeah, the short answer, sorry, Scott, is yes, that there is scope to do that, but just be upfront and let us know what the plan is. Yeah.
Well, we're on the verge of doing our first loan, and the first loan is someone's bought a property, they've got money from another bank, and they need us to come in as part of the deal as well. So we're working with the other bank to get a second lien on the property, which basically means we have some security that we can attach to the loan. And we've done all the work behind the scenes to make that happen. And it's now just a case of finishing the legals, getting it to the people, and then the money can flow. So that's our first loan. In all, it feels like it's 90% of the way there. So
I'd say 95.
95. There you go.
Yeah. But it's a good example, yeah, of a situation where we have collaborated, really, although they sourced the original loan first. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just continuing to open it up, and you can just put your hand up too, or take yourself off mute if you've got a question. You don't have to put it in the chat. Quite happy to take it any which way. Okay. What if we are not creating new jobs? Can we still access capital? It's a really good question. It's a really hard question to categorically answer, but for example, you might be saving jobs. That's one thing. But our biggest measurement stick is the creation of new jobs, or getting people into the organisation, even if it's attrition and filling up with people with barriers over time, even if it's generating pathways through the business, but your job count doesn't go up over time, i.e. you've got 8 jobs, but you move people on every year or two into jobs elsewhere so that you're freeing those jobs up, right? So what we're looking for in total is that you are creating jobs. We are considering, and we'd love to have a test case around this, because it would get our thinking going around a disability enterprise who wants to improve the conditions of employment in their social enterprise, or the wages of the people who work there, for example. So we're open to some innovation in the thinking around this as well. Okay, how's the impact discount work? Marina, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, so basically, we have 3 different rates that we have decided that we can offer in collaboration with our investors. This is how we have established it. So you can borrow at 3 different rates. For example, at 6.5% is the lowest. And at the outset of the loan, we will collaboratively decide on some social impact targets, and that will actually be included in an appendix to your loan agreement. So you'll have signed saying that you're targeting these, and then we will, and you'll be reporting on this on your social impact periodically anyway. But after 4 years, if it's a 7-year loan, if it's a shorter loan, it'll be sooner. And we will independently come out and do a review of the social impact and try to independently verify some of that reporting. And if you have achieved your social impact, then we will calculate your repayments so that we've reduced your effective rate over the life of the loan by 50 basis points. So on a small, so let's say on a $150,000 loan over 7 years, your payments would fall by $300 a month after that, after 4 years for the remaining 3 years. So it's not a huge, it doesn't sound like a huge amount, but we feel like it's enough of an incentive. And it is, yeah, it's applies to all the 3 different rates. So it's always a 50 basis point discount.
Just to make the point, I mean, our investors didn't come in for the financial return, just to be really clear about that. They're here for the social return. They like the fact that they get their money back. They're not getting a great interest rate. You could probably do the maths from 6.5%. There's not a lot of money going back to them. But they're there for the social return. So in terms of, is this another Myrna? That's really cool that we've got 2 Myrnas, names spelled differently.
That's a bit weird, yeah.
Yeah. But
a lovely name though.
I mean, I think some of this we can't, concretely say, right? I mean, the 6.5% rate is a low rate anyway. We would have to believe that you had done, you at 4 years were either hitting the mark or had you were very close to the mark and had every reason to believe that you were on your path to achieving your impact target over time. So, I understand that sometimes social enterprises take a step backwards because of market conditions or whatever might affect them. So, it could be that we do a review another year or 2 later after that. We haven't come to that problem yet. We're literally 2 months into the fund. But, it's a good question that we'd have to consider at the time as to how we actually dealt with that if you were below and didn't believe that you were going to get to the mark of that you set for yourselves.
But I would assume that if you've earned it, it'll just apply because you'll have earned most of it, in that first 4 years. Yeah.
All right. Let's just see if there's any more questions from anyone. I mean, this is a very good opportunity to ask us, and the whole intent of this was that we didn't have to have 50 conversations. We could have one conversation where all the questions came up and, you'd be clear about the application process. So if there's anything on your mind, just get it out there now. That would be really useful for us. How do we set the interest rate? Look, this is, and I'll get Myrna to answer this, but I actually think one thing I did want to say is we have fixed interest rates, right? So, most of you probably have variable home loans. We don't have variable rates. We have fixed rates. It's just the easiest way to manage something like this. And we know that we're way under market rates in terms of, when we're looking at the private sector, getting a loan potentially without security, often for 3 years, you're looking at sometimes 20 to 30% on those loans. So I just want to be really clear. Our rates are designed to be highly competitive. That's where we saw a gap in the market. And Myrna, you can talk about what the criteria is for each one.
I mean, what has come up a number of times is people ask, well, surely if we're lower risk, we get a lower rate. And that's how traditional finance works. It's not how this is designed to work by virtue of the fact that this is not a traditional fund. So there's a number of factors that we'll consider. And as Mark said, it's already kind of a attractive rate. So the way we will look at your end market, we'll look at the competition, and we'll look at your capacity to repay, so what you can actually afford to repay, and availability. And we do expect that most applicants will have no other options for capital. So it's not a simple computer says yes or no. It's a well-considered outcome of the IC and the whole DD process.
And Rob, I mean, your question about larger social enterprise, there isn't an issue with a larger social enterprise, but we are responding to the market failure. Okay, so if you can access commercial finance, you don't really need us at the end of the day. So if you can go to the bank and get the money at 7% or something like that, because you've got, you know, significant assets to secure against it. You've got a long trading history. You make good money every year. We're probably, well, I'm not going to say concretely anything at this stage, but that's not what it was designed for specifically. It was to recognise a whole lot of people in the social enterprise, particularly jobs-focused social enterprises, because you've got these impact costs that no one pays you for at the end of the day that normal businesses don't have. The reality was we were setting this up for people who can't access other forms of capital, right, other than grants at the moment. So that was our key driver. Or you're getting ridiculous rates that are prohibitive when you go to get finance from commercial options. So no, size doesn't preclude anyone from getting a grant in this instance. It's not a criteria for us. The 50% of trade, this is Sally Owen, 50% of trade is usually easy. However, we just got the SETI grant and are applying for many grants for our new venture. I gather from what you said that as long as you can demonstrate we're usually over 50%, as we drop year one, we'll be okay. Also, does being social traders audited, is this an additional audit or does it count? So, I mean, we do have rules around certification, or you are in the process of getting certified. So being social traders certified certainly is a tick as far as we're concerned. It's not like we look at any of their data. We're just saying, well, you've been through a certification process. You are a social enterprise. If you've got People, Planet, and you know the one I mean, the other one, People and Planet. Sorry for anyone from an organisation. That counts. And if you're working towards it, that counts too. We just need validation that you're a social enterprise. I mean, I worked at Social Traders for 13 years, and I think I could tell pretty quickly whether you're a social enterprise or not, but validation makes it very easy for us. We just go, you are a social enterprise, saves us some thinking that we might need to do.
And Sally, just to answer the first part of that question, no, that wouldn't rule you out. We would be looking at your historicals and we would take that into consideration. So like we're trying to be consistent with the substance of the investment policy as opposed to absolutely to the letter, to the point that we're ruling out very worthy social enterprises. So no, that's fine.
Thanks. Myrna, this one's for you. How will you assess applications if you're oversubscribed for the capital?
Yeah, that's probably the hardest question so far. Thank you, Kira, for sending that through. So that will look this. So there's a few parts to it. I'm obviously going to pick the easiest ones to do first. No, I'm not. We will try to run a couple of them concurrently. And you know what we've already found is that different stages takes a different amount of time. So, and everyone produces their data that I said we request at different stages. So what we would do is, I already have an analyst working with me, but we have access to another couple of people in White Box Enterprises, which is really lucky. We can use those resources when needs be. I hope we will be able to manage it with those extra resources and just try and get a number done at the same time. But there may come a point where we need to just work out what the deadline is for various social enterprises needs and then kind of sequence them in that form, you know.
Kira, I mean, there's a couple of ways you could take this too. We're not comparing them against each other, each social enterprise. They're being done in their own right. You know, eventually, hopefully, we'll run out of money and we won't have any more money to distribute. That's the goal. And then we won't be able to deploy any more capital. So what Myrna says to everyone is there's a queue and you either are in the queue or you're not in the queue. And if you're not in the queue, you've got to wait for other people to get their processing done first. We've only got so much capacity. Okay, so moving down, is it more accurate to describe this as a charity loan rather than a social enterprise loan? Given the DGR status requirement, I will comment on DGR. We have DGR because one of the we got a grant for our first loss capital, right? So we have something, if you're an investor, from an investor's perspective, they don't know how likely this is going to be as a success, right? So they're looking at it going, well, you're doing a startup fund, putting money into social enterprises that commercial organisations won't put money into. How many are going to default? And we don't know. And so we said to them, what would make it attractive to you? and they said if there was a certain amount of first loss capital, and what first loss capital means is it's the capital that an investor is prepared to forego. And traditionally, the first loss capital would be, someone who gets a massive financial return if it succeeds, right? So if you think about, Google and Facebook and all that sort of stuff, first loss capital is, the person who's getting 30 or 40% returns, for example, as opposed to 10 or 12 or 15, which the others would get paid. In our case, first loss capital is probably recognising that up to 30% of our money will be defaulted. We hope it'll only be about 5 or 10%. We don't know, but we expect there will be defaults, right? This is catalytic capital. Some people will not be able to repay our money. We kind of know that. And that 30% first loss protects the other investors, okay? So as long as our losses are less than 30%, they get their money back and they get all the interest that's attached to it. The only way we could get first loss capital was through grants. Some of the grants had DGR status attached to them, and that meant that we had to be restricted to DGR PBI. We would love to have a fund that wasn't restricted to DGR PBI, just to be really clear. But the world would not play with us unless we had that money that was grant in the first place. So we have no problem with, we would love to be able, and we know that we're cutting half the market out.
Yeah.
And that's really, for us, it's not great, but at the same time, we've got some pipeline. We think that the next fund, if we get it right, could be open to any jobs-focused social enterprises. So, this is part of a journey for us.
And I'll just jump in and say, we are hoping or expecting to apply to the ACNC to get an allowance of a certain amount to loan to not-for-profit, for profit for purpose. It won't be a huge amount, and it will be likely have to be at the higher interest rate to allow us to do it, to be consistent with our PBI objectives. But there is scope to do a little bit, and that's from from a meeting this morning.
Yeah, okay. So over time, maybe keep an eye on us if you can't go to us yet, and we'll be very public about it when we can be.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Sharon, we've started our social enterprise to create more jobs, careers, small business in the arts and creative industries where there are not a lot of well-paid jobs. We're bored of building but need to fit it out. Okay, so you're asking us if you would fit. Certainly there's nothing there that we would have to determine whether we think artists have barriers to employment. That would be the key determinant in this, around as well as all the DD, right? So it's not the typical profile, I guess I would say, but we would have to have a discussion with you as to the rationale for that at the end of the day. I mean, when we think about challenges, I do think about refugees, I think about people with disabilities, I think about people with autism, think about people, Indigenous Australians who find it hard to get jobs, long-term unemployed, migrants, refugees, yada, yada, yada. But it's not, well, there you go, you've got both. Sally, you might want to come off mute just so we can hear you, because it feels like this isn't a texting conversation. Do you want to?
I think that was a reference to the charity and the.
Oh, okay. You've got both statuses. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right. I probably answered that. It's more a conversation that we need to have. So there's a little grey in our space. So I guess that's what we're saying as well, and we'll figure out where the edges of the grey are over the coming years.
And just to reiterate that, it's about being able to evidence. So, we need to be able, when we talk about due diligence and kicking the tires, it's verifying. We need to be able to do that independently. So you say we're creating jobs for disadvantaged groups, whoever they are, then we would need to be able to go and somehow validate that and verify that, because then we have an obligation to demonstrate that to our investors. So it's not that we don't believe it, it's all just about transparency. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. That's great to see. Just an added comment. We would also see rural and regional jobs where there aren't jobs in town, where there's high levels of unemployment, those sorts of things. You make the case, we consider it for sure. We don't have a sort of a one-size-fits-all model here. But we'll be honest with you, and we'll have those conversations with you. And if we have doubts, we'll let you know that up front. We don't want you to waste a lot of time, preparing documents if it's not going to be eligible either. Okay, I'm going to call for last questions. Well, 45 minutes is a good conversation. So thanks everyone for coming along. We really appreciate it. I think Wendy put a link to the website. So we have a website dedicated to the SELF. It's on the White Box website under innovation projects. And that's also the place where you get to going through Process Street. So that first stage of filling out an interest form. And that's the easiest way for us because it saves having lots of phone calls. If you can go through that Process Street process, we can then come back to you if we think you're eligible for further discussion on this. Okay. Scott, you've gone off. Are you about to say goodbye, or do you have
thank you. No, great. Thanks very much.
No, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we can work with some of you over the coming months and years. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks,